It's about prioritization. And the reason that I was like, oh, I'm so glad I got a prioritization question. Had a lot of fun talking about prioritization at the Grant Professionals Association conference in Louisville this past November. We were talking about 8 different ways that you can prioritize grant proposals. Such a great time. And actually, we got to do it as an encore webinar with GPA. So, actually, if you're a GPA member watching these office hours, you could go watch that recording if this is something of interest to you. But the reason it was front and center in my mind is because Nonprofit Academy, a longtime partner of our team, has asked us to come talk about exactly the same thing, but those are not just grant professionals. So while the question came up about how do I prioritize when there are so many grant deadlines coming up, right? What's the best way to prioritize? We're about to have the conversation next week, literally Tuesday, maybe 1 p.m. Eastern. Not sure. Come join us if you're an NPA member or if you want to become one. But that conversation about prioritization in that setting is not going to be only about grants. It's also going to be about prioritizing all the fundraising work, all of the nonprofit work that the Nonprofit Academy awesome members are focused on. They are really cross functional in terms of the different titles and roles that they play in nonprofits. All right, bringing it back then to the grant conversation, though, and the question that happened, there are 8 different methods that our team has tried and used, and we have presented as options for other grant writers and grant professionals to use when prioritizing. Now, there are more than 8. If you start to Google about prioritization methods, specifically in Agile or Scrum spaces, you're going to come up with more than 8. The 8 that I'm talking about, though, are the ones that we have tested and tried and have found to be potential ways that we could shake things up, think about what's the right order. It could be about the must haves, the things we must do. We have a deadline, we want to renew the money. To us, that's a must do. So maybe we're using the Moscow method must have, could have, should have, won't have. It could be that we're thinking about just really fast methods. We want to try something like bubble sorting. So looking at item 1 and item 2 and saying which one of these two is more important and sorting accordingly. And then taking what came out as number 2 and comparing it to what we think might be number 3. And again, sorting. So the items can sort and bubble up or down as we compare one to the other and think about the relative importance. So those are 2 quick ways that you can take your grant calendar and start to think about prioritization. What's interesting and I think fun about this discussion and about the activity that I like to put forward when we have this discussion live together is that the 8 different methods can produce slightly different orderings of your priorities. And what that highlights and why it's important to understand that is that the way each of us prioritizes, me versus you, me versus an executive director in an organization, me versus a development director over here in this organization, it's going to be unique. So the conversation we want to have is with our peers or with our senior leaders, depending on the situation, about what method do we want to use to prioritize and why, recognizing that it matters which method we use because we will get different results, and we'd like to make sure that we all agree on the methodology. I could talk prioritization all day, but that is not the point of our office hours here today. You have things to do. You have grant applications to get back to. So if you want to talk more about prioritization of your grant applications or more broadly about your work, let us know in the comments or be sure to reach out. We'd love to talk about it with you more.